Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, the Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store. And good morning, Manitoba hockey fans. Welcome to episode 9 of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast here on G-Show Productions. I'm your host, Graham, the G-Show Forsyth. Happy to be back. We've gone through quite our fair share of technical difficulties this year, and this most recent one so far was the worst. Our MacBook battery ended up dying out, and currently right now, still trying to sort the problem out and getting the battery fully replaced, but the laptop's been cooperating more lately. Been able to use it when it's charging. So yeah, we're gonna roll the dice, and I've been tired of not producing content, and been itching to get back, and I'm happy to be back here on this Tuesday morning. One of our few November shows so far, brought to you by McKenna Fasteners and Tools, Terraco Goaltenders. And as you just saw from our commercial to start off this episode in Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, we're going to have a superstar guest joining the show today in Owen Warnick, one of the top point getters so far in the MJHL. He also committed to a D1 university, which we'll be revealing during his interview. For next season, the 06 born forward is going to be joining the show next of the Selkirk Steelers. We're also going to be taking you through the stats, the standings from around all the leagues we can from here in the amateur hockey scene in the province of Manitoba. So, without further ado, let's get into it with Owen Warnick, number 17, leading point getter of this year's Selkirk Steelers so far, joining this edition of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast here for episode 9 on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca. Glad to be back, everybody. Number 17 of the Selkirk Steelers in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, Owen Warnick, joining this edition of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast. Owen, you're off to a tremendous start here in your now third season in the MJ as an 06 born player, 27 points in 21 games played. The Selkirk team, one of the best to start off the year. Talk to me about, what it's been like to get off to such a great start this year for you and your teammates.
It's been awesome. We had a super good start. We went 10-0. It's been great. A little bit of a step back the last few games, but we're just ironing out just stuff in the defensive zone, and I think we'll get right back on track.
Yeah, and I mean, like you mentioned, start off the season 10-0. Now this team sits at 13-7-0-1, third in the East Division, but it's a long season ahead, and it's not always going to be all ups, as this team has come to realize. How do you feel like this team is, I guess, been dealing with it, diving more into that?
So yeah, just we've been in games where we'd be like hemming teams in the O zone, and then they'll come back for one chance and score a goal. So we just need to really just, how do I say it? Just really focus on our details and those little mistakes that do cause those chances. And we've been working on that a lot in our last few practices. So I think we're doing a good job at getting that done. So yeah, should be good coming up the next few games.
Going back to last year, this was a team that ended up missing the playoffs, finishing 5th in the East Division. Obviously, being a part of that team last year, I'm sure there's some motivation to get into the playoffs. Is that maybe the biggest goal this year for this Selkirk team, is to get back into the dance?
In my opinion, our goal is to win the championship. I think we have a team to do it for sure. To make the playoffs, I think isn't like that's a for sure for us. I think we definitely have the team to do that. It's our goal is to win a championship.
Fair enough. And I mean, this team has definitely shown to be among, one of the best so far this year, being third in the East Division to start off this season. For yourself, I mean, off to a 27-point start and 21 games played. This is now your third year in the league. You started off with Swan Valley before making it to Selkirk, last year. Can you tell me about how that came to be for you to go from Swan to this franchise now in Selkirk?
So yeah, it's actually my second year here. So yeah, I started my MJ career off in Swan Valley last year. Played the first half of the year there. Ended up getting traded to Selkirk early December, and then kind of just had a little feeling out process for a couple of games, and then after Christmas had a few really strong games, and then unfortunately broke my wrist, and then that kind of sidelined me until pretty much the end of the year. I played a few games at the end of the year, but yeah, it was unfortunate that I wasn't able to help the team, but it's just the way it goes.
Yeah, and you kind of gotta wonder. I mean, I'm wondering how this team would have fared in the playoff race. Maybe more beneficial, of course, with you in the lineup with what you bring. But yeah, I'm also realizing now that last season it was the 2023-2024 season. That
Yeah,
was like 2 years ago now. As time continues to fly by here. But
yeah,
take me through that. Obviously tough, having that type of injury, and especially, the moment it came at, in such a critical part of the season. How have you felt that you've learned from that, the experiences you took away from a negative situation?
for sure. Like it was a really tough time because I just had like the best game of my year the game before, and then it was literally the first shift of the next game. It just showed me that like how much I missed being on the ice with the team and just playing games, being away for so much. So I just cherish every game I play. Try and work my hardest and give it my best every game, just because anything can happen out there, and don't want to take it up to chance that you didn't give it your all.
Oh, for
Because
sure. For sure. I think that's a great way to look at it because, yeah, I mean, like anything truly can happen. And yeah, I mean, it puts things into perspective for sure about how much fun this game is, how great it is, and how, yeah, we can't or shouldn't always be taking things like the sport for granted. But for yourself, you've taken full advantage of your opportunity in this league in terms of showcasing your skills, and it's been Northern Michigan University who's been keeping tabs on you, obviously. You've committed there for the 2025-2026 season to play D1 hockey. Take me through that decision, you being only 18 years old, choosing this as your next place to play in your future here.
yeah, a huge part of me wanting to go there is that actually my coach Hudson Friesen, he was recruited by Northern Michigan's coach when he was with Alaska Anchorage. So Hudson played with the Steelers a while ago, and he actually got recruited by the same coach that recruited me. So I definitely know that this coach is really good, and I just like it. It's such a nice place out in Marquette there, so I couldn't pass it up.
Oh, and that's cool. You got some, local ties with your coach, of course, playing for that program. And then all these years later, now you'll be making your way out. But, the MJ, it's been, called a development league. Obviously, you'll be taking that next step in your development by going into playing university at that D1 level. Can you, I guess, speak about the valuable experiences you've had so far from this time in the MJHL that you've used to better your game?
Yeah, it taught me just how to play in every role, like penalty kill, defensively. Because obviously I'm more of an offensive oriented player, or I was, and now I've really been trying to iron out the defensive part of my game and the physical part of my game. That's really what my goal is this year, is to really get down the back half of like the defensive end of the game for sure. My 200-foot game.
Right, and so many of the great players, the great talents I've talked to talk so much about rounding out their game and being reliable in all facets of it, and definitely gonna take you far, Owen, if you can continue to round out your game. But coming off of an injury coming into this season, the hopes of this team to win a championship, you getting off to such a great start. How, I guess, much of an ease has that been off the stress of your shoulders in terms of coming into this year with, coming off of so much adversity?
Yeah, it was definitely refreshing off the start, but obviously now knowing that the job is definitely not finished, we still have a lot of games left to play to get put ourselves in a really good spot to win a championship. So yeah, the job's just not finished yet.
How would you describe your game this year compared to last year, given what you were able to learn last year, and given that you're, a year older in the league this year?
Yeah, I think just I've gotten a lot better at making plays under pressure because obviously in the MJHL there's not a ton of room to dangle or do a ton of stuff like that. So just really, really making quick plays off of a lot of pressure, I think, has really helped, and using my speed too, because yeah, that's been a factor as well.
And you're one of the young ones out there, a younger player in this league. What's that been like going up against, the older competition this year and last year, and as well as, getting to learn it and get to know the older guys that you've been able to play with?
Yeah, the guys that I have played with have been incredible people. Really helped me bring me in and make me feel comfortable with the team for sure. And then just practicing with them and just seeing their tendencies being more mature and just seeing their habits has really helped me grow my game as well.
Yeah, and definitely, looking to continue on that improvement heading into this upcoming weekend for this squad, or this upcoming week for this squad. The past weekend, this team losing to Wayway Capo, got them on the 13th with a 3-1 win. But going into that game against Verdun on the Tuesday, the day this episode comes up, facing against your former team in Swan Valley. Just this week in general, this team fired up, ready to go.
Oh yeah, we're gonna play with a chip on our shoulder for sure because the Wayway game didn't go the way we wanted it to. So we're gonna come out guns a blazing for sure against Verdun.
And yeah, I mean, all these games can be seen on Flow Hockey, and Owen Warnick looking to be in the center of the attention this week, coming up for this Selkirk Steelers team, going up against teams like the Verdun Oil Capital, Swan Valley, and Portage coming up on the 24th as well. Owen, thanks for taking the time, man, and doing this. It was great getting to know you and talking to you. And yeah, like I said, best of luck to you and the boys heading forward this year.
Thank you very much.
And Owen Warnick, number 17 for the Selkirk Steelers, joining this edition of the MJHL podcast, brought to you by Can Central Sports Cars and Memorabilia, Make Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. And yeah, Owen may not be leading the league in points at this point in the year, but it's Cameron Bollinger who does for, excuse me, the Portage Terriers. For Owen, though, he's still within striking distance of being at the top of those point leaderboards. His teammate in Luke McCarthy also in the top 5 in points with 26 and 19 games played. For the Selkirk Steelers, of course, this is a team, if we take a look at the standings after a 10-0 start, those are the scores, the standings right here. They're now 13-7-0-1. But as mentioned with Owen Warnick, as he's still within striking distance at the top of the leaderboards there, so is Selkirk if they can start to get back in the win column as the season goes along more frequently, as they've, fallen quite a bit from their strong start to the year, but it's about those ups and downs and how you handle them, right? And how does Selkirk handle it with this talented group heading forward this season, as Warnick says that this group has their eyes set on a championship this year. Going to be exciting to see where this group takes themselves when it's all said and done this year in the MJHL. But we're going to get to MJHL scores as well as Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League action, Winnipeg High School Hockey League, and Manitoba Women's High School Hockey League reports as well. It's talking about the Manitoba Bison's hockey programs, how those two university teams, the men's and the women's program, programs, as I should say, fared this past weekend in play. You're watching the Manitoba Hockey Podcast here on G-Show Productions, brought to you by Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, Goaltenders, and Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. More to come here after this quick commercial. Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry upper deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, the Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store. Welcome back to this edition of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast here on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca. Hopefully everyone is doing well on this Tuesday. Seeming like we're going to be getting snow here in the next 2 days, which, you know what, honestly, I'm not too mad about that. Obviously, as winter goes along, you know, the snow may get a bit tiresome, and the road conditions, hopefully they're pretty good this year, because there's been some years where during the winters, man, those highways here in this province, a bit undrivable at that. But it's November 19th, we still haven't gotten snow yet until I guess today and tomorrow. So if you're not a fan of the snow and you have lived here in Winnipeg or Manitoba for a while, this is a huge win for you so far this year. And yeah, I mean, speaking of teams who ended up having big wins this past week in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, as we take a look at the standings, the Pistons, they're now 16-2-1. They sit atop of the East Division standings. For the Dauphin Kings, they sit atop of the West, as mentioned, with the Selkirk Steelers, a team that was once first at some point this year in the MJHL season, now falling down to fourth in their division, a point back of the Winkler Flyers, the defending champs, who they've gotten better as this season has gone along as well. You look at the goal differential there for the Winkler Flyers, 45, second best in the whole Manitoba Junior Hockey League. As you can see, the only team better, the Steinbach Pistons. The Freeze and the Stampeders, they continue to struggle. From the last time that we took a look at the standings, a team that I'm interested to see, can they continue to get better as the season goes along, as the Verdant Oil Capitals, as they're currently fourth place in the West Division. But in terms of the scores from this past weekend, they played 3 games on Remembrance Day, took a day off, then played 3 on the Wednesday, and then things really got packed on the schedule on Friday and on Saturday. The league only playing that one game, an OT game that went to the Winkler Flyers 3-2 on Grey Cup Sunday. That was Winkler faring way better than those Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Can't get those 4 hours back in my life of watching the hometown Bombers here for you Winnipeggers lose that 3rd straight Grey Cup. It was tough to see. But what's not tough to see is, well, look at all these stats. These stats leaders have been going off so far in the MJHL. Cameron Bollinger, as mentioned, leads the league in points in the MJ with 32. Behind him is this week's guest, and Owen Warnick, with 27. His teammate Luke McCarthy also in the top 5 in points. Northern Manitoba Blizzard forward centerman Miguel Bouvier rounding out that top 5 in points leaders there. As for the goaltenders, no goaltender's been better than Christian Green for the Steinbach Pistons, a .947 save percentage, 3 shutouts, and only 1 loss on the year. Hats off to Christian Green so far on his dominance in the MJ to start off this 2024-2025 campaign. But Mitchell Kathler and Alex Reedy, 2 rookies, make an appearance in this week's top 5 goaltenders statistics. We're going to move over to a bit of a younger league in terms of younger players in the Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League. As we take a look at the past weekend of play, they didn't kick off their week until Wednesday last week. We saw some close games on the schedule. And yeah, a few blowouts in there overall. But as we take a look at the standings, it's the Brandon Wheat Kings and the Southwest Cougars who are at the top of the standings. Brandon back on top of the standings, I think for the first time this year, if I'm not mistaken. They were around the 4 spot a few weeks ago. The Winnipeg Wild and Bruins have fallen a bit in the standings, but there's not much room separating the top teams there. This is going to be a very competitive season, as it always is in the Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League. But even if we look at the goals for, goals against differentials of these top teams, they're all dominant. I mean, yeah, you got the teams near the bottom that have been struggling in the Yellowhead Chiefs and the Central Plains Capitals, but even them, I mean, they've been able to get in the win column as well. So, great to see there's no team that is winless in this league, to be honest with you, because you always hate to see that. And, yeah, I know with Central Plains being added back in, they're questions about how things would fare probably from, teams from around the league, right? Adding that 13th team back in, what's that going to create in terms of parity? Well, been seeing it so far, and this league staying tight near the top of those standings. In terms of skaters and goalie stats in this league, Luca Pira for the Winnipeg Wild, 33 points in 17 games played. That's almost 2 points per game there, as you can see. Tyler Wamble as well. A bit of a new name, I think, making it into the top 5, as I didn't recognize them last time. I know that Quentin Fisk is, he's dropped a bit in the points leaders. I believe he's still in the top 10, but not quite in the top 5, as you can see there. In terms of the goaltending leaders, Matthew Mitchell for the Brandon Wheat Kings, very strong start to his year with a .914 save percentage. In terms of shutouts, he has 1. Justin Perreault for the Winnipeg Wild, I believe, leading the league right now in shutouts with an impressive 3 in 10 games played. So getting a shutout 33% of the games, or 30% of the games you play, not too bad at all. High school hockey league action now, as we mentioned. We'll be talking about that up next. We'll start with the boys league, the Winnipeg High School Hockey League. It's those St. Paul's Crusaders, off to a bit of a slower start this year, but through 9 games they find themselves at the top of the standings. Not the best team, though, by the record, technically. A team with a better win percentage right there, as you can see, the Vincent Massey Trojans. They're only 2 games less played than St. Paul's and have 1 less point than them. Of course, a win in this league warrants 3 points instead of the standard 2, as we usually see. So Vincent Massey with their next win, and depending on how St. Paul's fares in their next game, could be seen Vincent Massey maybe jumping up in the first. But yeah, if we take a look at these standings here, of course, the Stonewall Rams continuing to struggle, a 1-7 record, an OT loss in there, their only win coming in OT as well, so they didn't get the full 2 points for that one. But in terms of points leaders in this league, we only go top 3 for this, because while it was tough to fit the top 5 for both point categories on the editing screen we use, but it's Nolan Fielding for the River East Kodiaks, that 25 points in 8 games played, on pace for monster numbers by the end of it, and if he's able to sustain this, he's already put up monster numbers. Hayden Cochin, as well as Cam Sylvester, have been very impressive as well, 2.57 points per game. Goaltending wise, Nathan Dick for Vincent Massey. I mean, you wonder why Vincent Massey's been so good this year. Take a look at their goaltending tandem, both him and Tuomanen, with 3 wins each. Dick with an undefeated record, and a .956 save percentage for Tuomanen. 2 shutouts so far this year. Very impressive stuff there from that goaltending tandem. The Belleville Barracudas still sit atop of first place in the Winnipeg Free Press Division standings, Division 2 in this league. They got a bit of a cushion right now, except they do have 2 more games played than College Jean Sauvé, who was only 5 points back of them. Fun fact, a lot of College Jean Sauvé's coaching staff is actually alumni of this Belleville Barracudas program, so that's going to be a fun matchup when they get to take on each other this year for sure. But for, the points leaders, even though this team is winless, Samuel Maitre, apologies if I butchered your last name there, Samuel, but you've been impressive to start this season, young man. 14 points in 5 games played, a 2.8 points per game average. He's on pace for a monster season so far. Just hoping that his team can start to get some wins to, hopefully reward him with that play because, sensational start to the year for him. Maverick Shimon for Dakota and Grayson Matthews for Dakota, both tied at 14 points each. As for goaltending wise, no goaltender has been better wins wise than Braden Treshell so far for Jean Sauvé. Shinnery and Chartrand from the Gophers for Shinnery and Chartrand for Murdoch McKay both round out this top 3 in wins so far in the league. The Winnipeg Free Press Division in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League so far this year. And then we finish off with the Price Division. The Louis Riel Voyageurs still haven't lost a game, 20 points so far, a perfect record, a high-powered offense, pretty good defense so far from this team, and the only team in the Winnipeg High School Hockey League with a true 100% winning percentage. But I mean, the players that have been driving the bus for them, it started with Luca Tatro, 32 points in 7 games played, almost 5 points per game, maybe not quite 5 points per game, but yeah, like 4.57 points per game, pretty darn good. Warren Wildcats, their goaltender, and Dallas Shaver has been pretty darn solid as well in net so far for his Wildcats, with 4 wins in 5 games played so far. Almost 100 saves on his season for a .933 save percentage. We're going to take a quick little break here, and then I'm going to be back to give you guys some news about what's happened from around the Manitoba Women's High School Hockey League in the past week, taking a look at the standings and the stats, as well as seeing how the University of Manitoba Bison's hockey programs fared there. Men's and women's program. Coming up next on the Manitoba Hockey Podcast for episode 9, brought to you by McCann Fasteners and Tools, Terrico Goaltenders, and Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. More to come after this little transition. Well, welcome back to the Manitoba Hockey Podcast here on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca. And by the way, before we get into these Manitoba Women's High School Hockey League statistics, as well as the University of Manitoba Bison's hockey teams, I want to let you know about what's coming up this weekend here on the network. We're going to be back tomorrow morning in terms of podcasting for episode 10, season 2 of the official Pilotmount Hockey Academy podcast, the Buffaloes podcast at 8 a.m. The Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast goes live at 8 a.m. on Thursday morning. And then we finish off our podcast schedule for this Week 10 podcast schedule with episode 7, season 2 of the MFHL podcast, all brought to you by our proud sponsors in Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, McCann Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. And yeah, it's not just podcasts we produce, of course, as I've said many times, as you already may know. We also produce hockey games. Well, we're back to our game day streams tonight. With that being said, at Southdale Arena, it's 2 rivals going at it in the St. Vital Junior Victorias and the St. Boniface Riels. Both teams looking to move a bit further up into the standings, as they're both top 5 teams in this league right now. Puck drops at 7:30 p.m. We'll have our pregame coverage, hopefully just starting after 7:20 p.m. if everything runs right tonight. But it's not just MMJHL games that we live stream. We also live stream Manitoba female U18 AAA Hockey League games. And tomorrow, well, it's going to be a heavyweight bout once again. 2 of the heavyweights in the league going up against each other at Seven Oaks Arena. The Avros ended up winning against the Winnipeg Ice 3-2, snapping, I believe, a 5 or 6 game losing streak against them. In the head-to-heads, the Winnipeg Ice have just owned the Avros overall in the past 2, but they've all been close games. This past Saturday was a close 3-2 win as well for the Avros, so gonna expect probably another close game coming up on Wednesday night, as that's when it is. Wednesday night at 7:30 p.m. You can catch it on G Show Productions on gshow.ca on our website. By the way, still uploading our week 9 or week 10 podcast schedule into our website, but all of our games are game schedules for the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League and the Manitoba Female Hockey League from this month November to next month December is available in our events tab for you to check out and see what games you may want to watch coming up here on the network. And yeah, as for this podcast, the Manitoba Hockey Podcast, hopefully you guys are enjoying it up until this point. If you have enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications here on our YouTube channel so you don't miss any future uploads of this podcast. But so we're going to finish off with talking about the Manitoba Women's High School Hockey League. We've talked about the MJHL, the Manitoba U18 AAA Hockey League so far, as well as the Winnipeg High School Hockey League. And yeah, it's time now to get into the women's side of the high school hockey scene here in the province. Those Glen Lawn Lions keep on winning, undefeated so far through 8 games, an 8-0 record, dominant defensively so far, dominant offensively so far, more so offensively I guess compared to the defense by the numbers from around the league, as yeah, no one has more goals for so far than the Glen Lawn Lions. And as for the players that have been driving the bus there, well, 2 players that of course I've mentioned many times on the show before that play in the MFHL, their school's benefiting strongly from them, and that school in particular being Glen Lawn and the Rigaud sisters, both tied with 21 points each in 7 games played. Another MFHL player making this list, she's tied for third in points, is Chloe Minkus for Glen Lawn. So yeah, all those players playing together on this Lions team this year. But yeah, as for goaltending wise, no goaltender been better than Celeste Pelletier so far for CJS. We take a look at the standings. I mean, their defense, it is the most dominant in the league so far by the numbers, and a big part of that being the play of Celeste. But yeah, in terms of Division 2, the first division we showed being Division 1, Sanford, they're undefeated as well. They've been dominant on both ends of the ice, both offensively and defensively so far. And if we take a look at the points leaders, they got Michaela Grant, that is tied for the point lead in the Division 2 here, as it's quite tight near the top of the points leaderboards there. But for the JH Bruns Broncos, they've been getting strong goaltending from Kayla Uchin this season, a 2-0 record, as well as one shutout for Kayla and a .978 save percentage. But we talked about Sanford just now and their goaltending tandem. I mean, look how dominant it has been, especially from Brooke Larson, a 4-0 record, a goal against per game that she's had on average, and she also has a shutout in there. Her teammate in Ainsley Boer, not nearly as good of a save percentage, but that goals against average still at 1. She has a shutout in her 2 games. And yeah, I mean, a goaltender, and these 2 goaltenders in general, not facing many shots so far this year, but making the most of it in their stops, being pretty efficient so far for this year's Sanford Sabres squad. Moving on to Division 3, the lowest tier division here in the Manitoba Women's High School Hockey League. The Dakota Lancers 8-0, 6 points up, 2 wins up on the PCI Saints. All teams in this division have wins. Beausejour and Belleville tied last with that record there. As you can see, Belleville with 2 games in hand on Beausejour. As for the points leaders in this league, no player's been better than Kara Lasuk for Springfield with 11 goals, a goal per game. Very impressive stuff there from Lasuk in 11 games played for those 18 points. Emily Kay for Springfield, she's been lights out so far, 3-1 record. Elizabeth Peary for Dakota as well, with a loss on the season. So just taking a look at the standings again, Dakota has lost 1 game, as you can see there, coming into OT, but overall goaltending's been pretty solid there from Peary with a .956 save percentage and 2 shutouts so far. So yeah, we're gonna have more updates. We're gonna put some scores in here as well from this High School Hockey League, the Manitoba Women's High School Hockey League, and the Winnipeg High School Hockey League coming up for next week's episode. But if you want to check them out, be sure to check out, I believe their website for the Winnipeg High School Hockey League is winnipeghshl.ca, and then for the Manitoba Women's High School Hockey League, it would be mwhshl.ca. So check out those two websites to check out the full stats from these two high school hockey leagues here in the province. But we'll end off with talking about the University of Manitoba Bison's hockey teams. And for the men's hockey team, I mean, it's been a rough November for them, to say the least. Sure, they've lost some close games in there, but 0-4, I mean, I'm sure members on this team chomping at the bit to get back into the win column, and they've been close this month. It just hasn't exactly gone this Bison's program's team's way. They'll be back in action coming up this Friday, going over to Alberta to face off against the Calgary Dinos in a back-to-back 2-game set this weekend. They'll finish off their month of November play in BC against the University of British Columbia Thunderbirds, starting on Friday, November 29th, as you can see there. But as for the women's program, I mean, it's been opposite for them to start off this month compared to the men's team. A 3-1 record, and what's impressive to me is how they bounced back. A 7-0 loss against Mount Royal this past Friday, and, maybe Mount Royal came in and didn't have the right mindset coming in. Maybe they took the Manitoba Bisons a bit lighter in that Saturday game, coming off of a big 7-0 win. But nonetheless, I mean, this Bisons team, you got to give them credit for not only bouncing back, but executing after a tough one on that Friday night. They've been enjoying some time away from their home province in Manitoba here in Winnipeg. They'll be back in Winnipeg to take on the University of Calgary Dinos in a 2-game set this weekend, as well as British Columbia coming here next week to take on this U of M Bison's team. To check out the full stats, the full schedules from these two programs, check out gobisons.ca. We are going to throw it to one last transition here. This is going to do it for today's edition of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast, but not just yet, as we're going to let you go here with some final words after this final transition of the show here for episode 9 of the MB Hockey Podcast here on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca. Well, you made it to the end of this edition of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast. I've been your host, Graham, the G-Show Forsyth. Special thanks to Owen Warnick for coming on and being the guest on this week's episode. Special thanks to our sponsors and Make Hand Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, Goaltenders, and Kent Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia for sponsoring another edition of this podcast and for continuing to support us and the coverage we have here on our network. And a special thanks to you, the viewer, for tuning into this one today. If you are new here, or maybe you've been here before and you enjoy our content nonetheless, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any future uploads here on our channel. Also help support us by growing our subscriber numbers. So would appreciate you if you decided to stick around and subscribe here. If not, no worries. Maybe we'll see you in our next episode of this podcast, which is coming next Tuesday, most likely at 8 a.m. For episode 10. We're going to have a new guest list, which is going to be fantastic. I can't wait to see myself who's going to be on that episode. We're still putting it together. But the details for that episode will be coming out at the start of next week on Monday. Apologies about getting, the stuff out a bit later yesterday. Meant to get it out a bit earlier, but we're making sure we were ready to go for this episode today, first and foremost. And it seems we are. We're back to production here on G-Show Productions. We got a big hockey game to broadcast tonight in the MMJHL. Female hockey game to broadcast tomorrow. Loads of podcasts still to come this week. And, of course, this podcast returning next week on Tuesday. It's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to have you guys tune in, and anyone who may be watching this podcast. But yeah, until then, folks, until we reveal who the guest list is and we go live for episode 10 of the Manitoba Hockey Podcast, I've been your host, Graham, the G-Show Forsyth, giving you the salute, peacing out, and saying so long on this Tuesday morning, everybody. Stay safe out there. Hopefully we don't get hit too hard with snow here, but if we do, get out and enjoy it if you can. And yeah, my dog is barking at me right now, so I think that's about time that we end off this episode. Got to take him out to do his business, I'm sure. No one, I believe, is home at the Forsyth household here right now. But that's enough of me rambling. I've been your host, as I said, Graham, the G-Show Forsyth. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next Tuesday.